Hey, Husker fans, Sam McKewon with the Omaha World-Herald and Husker Extra, and this is the 3 keys to Michigan. Nebraska's going up to the Big House in Ann Arbor, Michigan. I've been there a couple of times. It's a cool visual stadium. It kind of goes out more than it does up, and the students show up late no matter what time the game is. And so I don't know that it's going to be a really furious, mean crowd in Ann Arbor. It's probably just going to be a normal crowd, kind of a wine and cheese, money crowd at Michigan. But Nebraska is a 30.5-point underdog, and there's a reason why. Michigan A is a really good football team, probably the best team that Jim Harbaugh's had, or very close to it. Maybe the team last year was a little bit better, but Jim Harbaugh has a very good football team that is very good along the offensive and defensive lines, and they have pretty good skill talent. I would rate their skill talent about a B+. I'd put Ohio State in an A, and I'd put Michigan at a B+. And then Nebraska is probably not going to be with starting quarterback Casey Thompson. I'm recording this before Mickey Joseph talks on Thursday, so it's possible that Mickey will just say Casey is out. We fully anticipate Casey being out at least one more week, and then maybe playing next week against Wisconsin could, in theory, be Casey's senior day, even though he's not really a senior. There's a lot of dynamics there. You could see Casey play those last 2, but I feel confident he's going to be out for Michigan because it's going to be a hard game to win whether Casey was playing or not. So Nebraska's a 30.5-point underdog. For what it's worth, I think Nebraska's going to cover the spread. I don't think Michigan is going to beat them by 31 or 38 or whatever. But the last time the Huskers went up there, Michigan won 56-10. So Jim Harbaugh is not the kind of guy to take his foot off the gas because they're trying to play for a playoff spot. And even though a playoff spot for Michigan is going to be highly determined by whether they beat Ohio State or not, just so we're clear, Michigan can win every single game by 1 point, including the Ohio State game, and they will be in the playoff. Period. That's just how it's going to work. But if they lose to Ohio State, chances are good they're not going to be in the playoff because their schedule just wasn't very good this year, and Michigan won't have a lot of quality wins to fall back on. Anyway, long preamble to this. Let's go to the 3 keys. The first one is big house money. Nebraska is playing with house money here, folks. They're not going to probably win the game. They probably know they're not going to win the game, so they can play a little bit loose. There's a lot more pressure on Michigan going into this game. They're wearing that. They can't afford to make any missteps. It's one of those deals where if the game is close after 1 quarter, there's a couple people in maize and blue whispering at each other, what's going on? So Michigan has the pressure here. Nebraska does not. They're going to be able to play loose up there and maybe go for a few things. I'd say they go for them on special teams and defense more than they do offense. But play with a little bit of confidence. Play with a little bit of that underdog's confidence that you're going up there to shock the world. And sometimes if you start fast, you get up 7-0, 10-0, maybe you can shock the world. You never know. This would be about the biggest upset in recent Big Ten history. There's been a couple. Illinois beat Wisconsin back in 2019. That was a huge upset. And then there was the Minnesota upset of Penn State in '99 that people never forget. Penn State was, I think, number 1 or number 2 in the country. This would be up there with that. This would be a caliber of upset that big. I don't anticipate Nebraska being able to pull it off, but you never know. Play loose with house money. Second key, power play. What do I mean by that? Well, Michigan has a very diverse run game. They'll have a zone game, and that's where the linemen kind of all step together and they kind of block a zone, and the running back is trying to look for the hole that breaks open based on their blocking scheme. And then they have what you call power plays. And power plays are you block a guy, you have a double team, you pull a guy from the other side, try to create numbers on one side of the field, and it's a gap scheme. In other words, you're looking to have that play break in a certain spot, and you're usually trying to use your blockers to create a numerical advantage on that side. Those are the plays that Michigan's really good at, and that's a play that Michigan has been very successful with against Nebraska. Nebraska's got to find a way to blow those plays up, and you're going to have to be aggressive. Michigan has a very athletic line. They move really well. They're get downfield really well. Not the biggest line in the world, but they move really nicely. Nebraska's got to find a way to either run under those blocks. All right, so running underneath means you're running underneath the pullers, and you're getting the running back behind the blocks that he's about to go. So you have to have some quick guys that can run underneath those blocks, or they've got to find a way to really blow those blocks up, either with blitzes or with something else that creates a lot of carnage right at the line of scrimmage. and it forces those plays to be blown up. If Nebraska can blow up some of those power plays and kind of get Michigan behind the chains a little bit, you can go after their quarterback, I think. J.J. McCarthy's a good player. He was a former 5-star recruit. I got to be honest with you. I don't know exactly what's going on with quarterback assessment when it comes to looking at recruits and how a guy gets a 4 or a 5-star ranking. McCarthy's a fine player. He's not one of the best quarterbacks in the country. He's a little bit slight. He has an okay arm. He's fairly mobile. But I would not put him in the class of C.J. Stroud, certainly at Ohio State. I wouldn't put him in the class of Bryce Young at Alabama. I just don't think he's quite that good. There's just no other way to put it. And so I think you can get after McCarthy a little. He doesn't make a ton of mistakes, but he also doesn't necessarily read the defenses the best too. So I think you can get after him, maybe get a couple of sacks, but you got to blow up those power plays first, because if you don't do that, then shoot. I mean, it's going to be a really hard day. Key number 3. Slow your roll. Okay, what does that mean? Well, Nebraska has to slow its offensive tempo down. And by slowing it down, I mean you've got to get that thing to Minnesota, Illinois tempo, which is you're snapping the ball with 3 or 4 seconds left on the play clock. And I understand that sometimes you try to overwhelm a defense by going a little quick and not letting them get set up. And so you're moving fast. You're moving so fast that they don't get set up. I get it. Sometimes you have to run what Bill O'Brien used to call the NASCAR tempo at Penn State. Okay, so do that a little bit. But what you really need to do is be smart about how you're moving your tempo at the beginnings of games and toward the ends of halves. You got to move slow. You got to try to use up the clock, and you have to try to eat the clock. Not snap the ball with 17 seconds left. I don't even know what the point of snapping the ball with 17 seconds is. All right, you either snap it with about 25 or you go down to 2. I'm not sure what the 17's for. So learning to be smart there, trying to stay in bounds, being smart with the run game, sticking with the run instead of creating pass situations where you might have a drop pass and the clock may stop. You know, there's a lot of different ways to win on the scoreboard. I know Mark Whipple talks a lot about scoring points, but you know, one of the ways is you hold the ball long enough that the other team doesn't have enough time to score a lot of points. and I think sometimes that strategy eludes Nebraska. I'm not sure why, but it kind of does. And so imagine a basketball game where there's no shot clock, which is like, I don't know, 25 years ago. Imagine being North Carolina State and playing Houston in the NCAA championship, I think in 83 or 84. The reason North Carolina State wins that game is because they can hold on to the ball. And they have time, and they use the clock. And that's what Nebraska needs to do. They need to use the clock as their friend and understand that they don't have as much firepower as Michigan, and try to take as much time off the clock, shorten the game, and maybe get lucky late. That's kind of how you have to do it when beat these teams. I don't think Nebraska's going to win on Saturday. I don't. I think Michigan's a very good team. I think Nebraska is beaten up, banged up, won't have Miles Farmer at safety. That's not going to help. Probably won't have Casey Thompson. That's not going to help. Those are probably two of the 10 best players on the team. That's not good. Then put in Nick Henrich. He's out. That's another one of those guys. So they're struggling. I mean, this is a beat up, banged up team. Typical Big Ten season, typical Big Ten November. Nebraska, I think, will lose on Saturday, but I think they can make it closer than people expect if they follow the 3 keys. Okay, we'll be there for all the coverage on Saturday. For the Omaha World-Herald and Husker Extra, I'm Sam McKewo'n. Thanks, Husker fans.